Welcome to CiviLNet. I'm Salpi Ghazarian, and I wear two hats these days. I'm still the proud director of CiviLNet, and I'm also director of the USC Institute of Armenian Studies. And I've been following the events of the last 2 weeks, as you have. For me, at the beginning from afar, and now for the last week, 10 days from here in Yerevan. And in order to try to understand it, explain it, work our way through all of the complex questions that we all have, I've invited, and I'm grateful has accepted, Gevorg Ter-Gabrielyan, who is a writer and has had quite an interesting trajectory since Armenia's independence, and is today director of the Eurasia Partnership Foundation. Gevorg, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
I know you could be a whole lot of other places at this moment. Talk very briefly about that trajectory, where you were at independence and where you are now, because I think that really gives context to what I'm going to ask you and your perspectives.
So, well, I've been born in 1964, center of Yerevan, Opera, right here, next to here. And an important element is that my relatives, like my grandfather's brother, was Serzh Ter-Gabrielyan, which means they were Bolsheviks who established the rule in this country. Next, I have Armenian language education, as different from many other friends of mine from the center of Yerevan who went to the Russian schools. Then I became Oriental scientist, Turkologist. I am the only person in Armenia who has a PhD from Moscow State University and from the Academy of Sciences of Russia in Turkic linguistics. And then I moved into politics because of Artsakh movement, writing all the way through. Since 14 years old I'm publishing stories, and then I left Armenia to study more, and it became 14 years of absence with very frequent visits. I lived first in Prague for 1 year, then 4 years in the United States, and then 8 years in London, and 1 year in Germany. Okay, and then 2 years in Moscow as well. So altogether,
back since?
I've been back. It's now the 11th year. I came back in 2007, and very soon after I came back, March 1, 2008 happened. So my first re-engagement with Armenia was accompanied with that great stress. And in 1988, 89, 90, especially from 1990, I worked very closely with the first Armenian government. I was a member of their Petrosyan's administration, not they had this position as an advisor. So I was not senior advisor like Liparityan, etc., but an expert in the stuff.
Okay, so given this context, you've been a part of it, you've watched it. Help us, help me understand and explain what I suspect is happening, certainly outside of Armenia, and that is that people are looking, people who are deeply concerned and often very active in Armenia, I suspect are looking and saying, do we need this? Do we need this turmoil? Do we need an uprising? Is it a revolution? Is this how we want to be doing this? And I can say fairly honestly that people who are asking that are also people who were not big fans of Serzh Sargsyan. And yet they are wondering, are we going down the wrong path? How do you explain this to those well-intentioned, concerned people?
Well, first of all, I can understand this concern. But secondly, I'm going to be pretty drastic. Do we need to get rid of Orwellian state and system?
Or not?
Or not. If we do, then this makes sense. Because, of course, this was not a perfect 100% Orwellian system, but this was getting there. And the fact that we can now go against it so far bloodless, in a bloodless way, is thanks to the fact that it wasn't for 100% Orwellian system. So many people feel towards Serzh Sargsyan this Stockholm syndrome, like he didn't kill us, therefore we are thankful to him. I'm not thankful to him, because I don't think, because he even said that in his last statement. He said, I had different options, and everybody in Armenia understands that he meant the violent option. But I'm not that kind of a guy. Okay, sorry, you didn't have these options, okay? So these options means you have a criminal intent, and you are overtly saying that.
What you're saying is that the leader of a people should not say that violence against that people...
He's not a leader of the people. He is a crook who had hijacked power and had created a system against the people. And the people were being co-opted in that system, and they didn't have courage enough to speak against it and not to participate in it. So let's not talk about leadership of the people. And all those diasporans who have accepted honors from him or have shook his hand, you can understand politics, that politically yes, but it was like spitting on my face. When I saw that after so much speak, Arsine and
Atom
came for the, as if for the election observation, and then they go to Artsakh, and then they meet with all these, you know, I don't remember, with Serzh probably too, and they are happy and they happily leave. That is, you know, that...
For the record, they did not meet with Serzh Sargsyan.
Okay, good, at least. But they met with Bakur, and they, I don't know what else they did. So it was like watering down this entire intent of trying to make Armenia better. So I can understand politics, congratulations, AGBU's statement, which was, you know, twofold, so it was barely tolerable. But let's understand that we were moving towards an Orwellian state, and in terms of socio-economic exploitation, it was like that.
I think we need to explain two things. One is that, to be fair, I don't think we in Armenian or in English, have done an adequate job of explaining the processes that you know on your skin very well.
I can explain why.
No, explain the Orwellian state part so that it makes sense. And then we need to talk about the second half of what you're saying, which, first, well, we'll get to the second half in a minute.
It is difficult to explain the Orwellian state in full, like, you know, picture in 2 minutes. But first of all, the state TV system has been hijacked, obviously. And if you think it's not a big problem, then it is a big problem, because for many years it's been a big problem. Secondly...
Let me explain that, because I lived with that on my skin, right?
Yeah.
What you're saying is that state television, all of the channels, whether privately owned or not, were directed by the presidential office. This is public information.
Exactly.
And they were given directives as to who you may invite and who you may not invite.
What you may say, what you may not say, and all that stuff.
What you may cover or not cover. Which, to be fair, is why CivilNet succeeded, dear viewers.
You could say so.
We took over that vacuum, that empty space, because all of the television stations together...
But in the internet, and before internet became the, you know, accessible to the entire population, it was totally, really horrible. So you have many of these, I mean, 2008, March 1, the killings. Nobody took responsibility for it. No serious investigation happened. No high-level person suffered because they had taken these orders. And Serzh Sargsyan came to power on this blood. And he did everything for people to forget it, for the international community, for Spurk, to take it into brackets as if it hasn't happened. And all these hundreds of people who suffered, not only these 10 who were killed, many who were taken into custody, these the political so-called prisoners, the people, the families, the people who were crushed, and all our hopes were crushed. Okay, so that was a regime which started with criminal intent, or based on a criminal action. And not to say that, and then why don't you say that all the time? Because first of all, this entire propaganda machine works against that. And secondly, when it comes particularly to the diaspora, there are two very similar arguments. One is that don't say that to our Congress people, please, because otherwise they should think that Armenia is our friend. If you are saying that there are too many problems, they won't give money to Armenia. Do you want not to give money to Armenia? Are you a traitor? And I think, no, of course, I want Armenia to receive money, even with this system, because, of course, some of it will evaporate in Monaco or wherever, but the rest of it will be, at least somehow will contribute to something here. So that's the first argument. And a very similar second argument, which is already a pure diasporan argument, is that you know, whatever it is our state. So we should respect their leadership. But there is a deeper reason for that, because people in the world, not only the diaspora, they have this idea that power can be illegal and unfair if it is in charge. So that it's like this, you know, this Hobbesian kind of approach, that whoever is in charge, as long as they are in charge,
is therefore
they have a right. So we should be kind of
power is its own legitimization.
Yes, we should kind of
kowtow and respect.
Now, this population in these few days demonstrated for the second time at least, because the first time it was 1988 when people moved for removing the Communist Party from power. So for the second time, to this moment in time, victoriously demonstrated first that they don't want Orwellian state, they want truth, they want dignity, and second, that the power should not be whoever is in power, they have the legitimacy. It's the other way around. Whoever I appoint has the legitimacy.
And that's something that basically since a few years after independence has been a challenge for Armenia, and that's being polite. Now, switch gears and come back to today. The other concern, and that's a mild way of saying it, in the diaspora and here, is that okay, Serzh Sargsyan may not be who we wanted, but is this what we want? And is this the leader, in this case, Nikol Pashinyan, is he what we want? Is this the sort of revolution that we want? What's the response to that? What's the response to that black and white sort of question?
Well, first of all, about the revolution, it has happened. I mean, the first stage of it at least. So there is no more sense in discussing do we want it or not. It has happened. Secondly, it is much bigger than any of us and than any of our opinions. I'm a pawn, and sorry, you and this system, because it's really a people's will. And it had a victorious trump card because Serzh Sargsyan resigned. Now they are saying there may be some intrigues, etc. But let's keep it in perspective. That was the first aim of this revolution, for Serzh Sargsyan not to occupy power. And nobody else was able to do it until now, okay? So, a bit of trust, non-violence is key, so I suggest a lot of statements and urges not to move to violent way of unfolding events. So the government, today's government would be the temporary government, the Karen Karapetyan government, the Republican government, who may be gone in a few hours' time, need to not to move to violence, because this morning when I saw the tanks in the street, I got really very upset and angry. But then I realized that they are surrounding the Republican Party headquarters.
It's so to protect the rulership rather than
non-violent movement can attack. Now, fortunately, Nikol has been very clear, and his team and the population and the studentship, they have followed the suit. This is a non-violent movement. What next? It's going to be difficult, hopefully non-violent, but if it succeeds, we'll have what we say in half Armenian, half Russian, kukla yerkir. We will have a perfect country. It's going to be hard work, but the first most important element is there. Truth is out. So that, you know, when you are being forced in living in this half truthful, half full of half truths, half lies, all of these compromises, and then you suddenly can breathe freely. So this is the most important thing, and based on that, given the wisdom that the movement, Nikol himself, the studentship have demonstrated until today, I have no reasons to doubt that the next stages will be successful. So far, I have no reasons to doubt, and I'm personally going to help them as much as I can with my little word, essentially, not much.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. And I want to reiterate the responsibility that we bear here to be able to explain the depth of emotion, rationale, thinking, experience, history that this society has lived for the last 30 years this year, since 1988, in order for those living in Armenia and outside Armenia to try to truly understand, comprehend the depth of the frustration and the intensity of the passion and the desire. And after that, people can make whatever conclusions they're going to make. But it's our responsibility to try to explain that and share that with you. So thank you for following CivilNet.